So, Mounty, you have defeated the first of my copy masters. Well, you should know that when you give non-living objects life, you will suffer the consequences.
Finally finished that countdown. Well, at least now I can get some sleep. Wait a minute. Guess I must have fallen asleep because I'm talking to myself in my mind. The pains of late-night editing. Hey Red, what are you doing in my mind?
I came to talk to you because something has certainly happened. The DC emotional spectrum has entered its way into this world through unknown means.
You've got to be freaking kidding me. Did they not see what those freaking lanterns can do?
Well, Mounty, when you give inanimate objects or things from other universes life in another universe, it creates negative consequences. But I am here in your mind because a Red Lantern Power Ring has chosen you.
Oh, what a frickin' surprise. In related news, the sky is blue. Look, I know the consequences for this, Red, and that's why I don't want this ring.
Look, I will never understand you, humans, but I doubt that you guys are filled with nothing but rage. Odds are if there's something positive you could talk about, then maybe it could counteract the ring. After all, in this universe, Pokemon are able to speak English when you gave them life. Maybe the rings work differently here as well. Well, it's worth a shot anyway.
Well, since I remade my least favorite final bosses list, I guess I could remake my favorite list. If that could help get rid of this Red Lantern, then yeah, I'll do it. Okay, I'll do it, but you need to explain to me afterwards what this all means, because I have no idea what the hell's going on. Alright, top 5 favorite final bosses. Final bosses! Whether you love them or hate them, they are an essential part of wrapping up the game and its story. Some are silly, some are very climactic, and others are just big brutes. And since I've done a remake of my least favorite final bosses, I figured that I would remake my favorite final bosses list next. I mean, what else would I remake? My Pokemon movies list? Since this list covers final bosses, there are massive spoilers ahead, so you have been warned. Like my last list, I will not only cover the fight itself, but I will also include the build-up/final level as well. The rules that I have for this list are only games I've played, one per franchise, and I will only talk about final bosses from games that were released after the year 1998. As I mentioned in the last list, I felt that the standards for final bosses began to change around this particular year, and it would be unfair to compare a final boss with story, build-up, emotion, etc. from something like Kingdom Hearts to a final boss from Super Mario Bros. It just doesn't work. Finally, this is strictly my opinion. You are free to disagree, and if you feel that a final boss should or shouldn't be on this list, do not be afraid to leave a comment of your favorite final bosses, or make your own list. So without any further delay, let's rock it! Oh boy, this one. Time to add a flame shield to this list, cause number 5 is Senator Armstrong from Metal Gear Rising: Revengeance. Unlike other final bosses you'll see on this list, Armstrong's not a dictator or some overpowered god. He's a senator of Colorado and wants to be the president of America! Fuck yeah! So after taking down Metal Gear Excelsis, which I don't count as part of the final boss fight, you get introduced to Armstrong, and this is where the writing for this game gets really silly. The dialogue from Armstrong is so over the top and insane, it puts me in stitches. He is so over the top, in fact, that when he throws Raiden up in the air and kicks him into one of the Excelsis pods, an invisible crowd is cheering in the background. Where did that come from? Needless to say, I was very hyped to kick this guy's ass after something like that. Too bad the first 2 phases weren't that fun. Not awful, but just not fun. Armstrong is a tank in these 2 phases, and by that I mean your attacks hardly do anything to him, while his attacks do massive damage. Hell, Armstrong snaps your friggin' sword in 2 after phase 1 ends, the same sword that cut down Sundowner in an earlier fight. This guy must have clearly eaten his bowl of nails for breakfast. I should hate this, but these 2 phases don't last too long to become a major issue, and it is very satisfying to punch Armstrong so hard he's pushed back, even if it's less than a foot. So why couldn't we do damage to him in these two phases?
Nanomachines, they harden.
So Armstrong kicks Raiden's ass some more, and it looks hopeless for Raiden now. But things start to look up for Raiden again when Blade Wolf, who was damaged in an earlier cutscene, shows up and gives Raiden Jetstream Sam's sword. Now it's on like Donkey Kong, and this phase manages to start off with a bang thanks to the music. It has so much energy to it, which fits very well with this fight since you and Armstrong are fighting at their maximum, while the lyrics represent how similar they are very well. They both believe what they are doing is the right course of action, but because their ways are different, they cannot agree with the other, and they end up fighting as shown with this fight and the ending. I also like that this fight utilizes every skill Raiden had throughout the game. You have to use Ninja Run to avoid Armstrong's attacks, you have to use Blade Mode whenever he throws chunks of Excelsis at you, or when he's healing, and I like this because it makes the battle a little bit more complex. Instead of using only one tactic and using that to win, you have to use every skill you have used up to this point in order to win. It tests how good you are at these skills, and watching the cutscenes after doing so, such as throwing Armstrong into a pile of wreckage, is so satisfying. Overall, I enjoyed the Senator Armstrong fight. It did have some issues, such as the first two phases, but considering how much fun I had with this boss, it comes off as more of a minor annoyance than an actual problem. Nothing more I can say about this, but
Don't fuck with this, Senator!
I'm not the biggest fan of Metal Sonic. After he captured Amy in Sonic CD's second level, he hardly appeared in the game until Stardust Speedway, where he had a race to the finish with you and then got killed. Years later, he would get revenge for his defeat by becoming Neo Metal Sonic. Throughout Sonic Heroes, he was copying data from the 4 teams, as well as Chocola and Big's Frog Froggy for something big, even going so far as to lock up Eggman, masquerade as Sonic, and take over the Eggman Empire. Damn! Towards the end of the game, Metal Sonic confronts our 4 teams on the top of the Egg Fleet, and he transforms into the Metal Madness, complete with a 40-second transformation. No. I know this was meant to build suspense, but it goes on for too long. But despite my issue with the length, that payoff is worth it, since he is now even more powerful than ever before. He has combined the data from the 4 teams with the power of Chaos, and adding those 2 factors to someone as strong as Metal Sonic, and you got a robot who could possibly be on the tier of a Planet Buster. Hell, Eggman himself says that the chances of beating Metal Sonic, the one who betrayed him, are slim, even with the Chaos Emeralds. So, needless to say, I really liked the build-up to this final boss. But how's the boss fight? I really liked it. One of the reasons I like this fight is how they used the team mechanic. Unlike bosses like the Egg Hawk and Egg Albatross where you can beat them using only one skill, Metal Madness has this orb that you have to hit in order to inflict damage on him change colors to either red, blue, or yellow, preventing that particular character from inflicting damage on him by themselves and requiring you to use everyone's skills in order to win. Which is good, because the main point of Sonic Heroes was working together as a team. But the Metal Madness isn't going to just stand there and let you hit him. He also has a nice variety of attacks, from a flamethrower to throwing spikes to even shooting finger missiles that can drop you in a gem and will make you lose a life if all 3 members get caught in these gems. But after taking out the Metal Madness, he gains wings and heads up to the sky where the final phase begins. It's Team Supersonic versus a souped up Metal Sonic, now known as the Metal Overlord. And this phase starts off with high hopes with the music. While not my favorite Crush 40 song, What I'm Made Of is still a great song to play for this final boss fight. While the music for Metal Madness gave off the feeling that he's a threatening creature and can destroy the world if he's not stopped, Phase 2's music has so much energy to it that it actually makes me excited to defeat this Sonic clone in a battle to save the world. But Metal Overlord doesn't just have some of his old attacks from his Metal Madness phase. He also shoots crystals at you, he could throw a ship from the Egg Fleet at you, and has his own brand of chaos control. Damn! What also makes Metal Overlord more powerful is that he is so strong now, the only way to do damage to him is by using Team Blast. That is some defense. And after defeating him, he returns back to his original body from Sonic CD. Well, all I can really say about this is GG Metal Sonic, you certainly put up one hell of a fight. One of the issues with growing up around video games is that when you look back at the games you played when you were younger, they usually haven't aged that well. This is usually because as you get older, your standards begin to change. But this also has a negative effect if a childhood favorite game of yours ends up being crap if you've replayed in your adult years. I got that feeling when I replayed Pokemon Gold and Silver a while back. While not a terrible game, a lot of the things I thought of as difficult or terrifying back then weren't really there when I go through it as an adult. The best example of this was when I took on Lance. All those years of anxiety and fear that came from this guy, which I mentioned in my top 80 favorite Pokemon list, were dashed when I realized, oh yeah, I just needed 1 or 2 rock types to beat him. One of my issues with the Pokemon champions is that most of their teams are focused on 1 or 2 Pokemon types. Wallace was mostly focused on water. Ours was a little better, but if you had an ice/fighting type, you were good. And need I mention Lance again? With champions like this, I wonder how they got that rank in the first place, because throughout your journey, you had to get Pokemon of different types in order to beat the Gym Leader/Elite Four. This was one of the reasons why I liked Blue. His team had a nice variety of Pokemon, and it made it more satisfying when I beat him because he felt more like a final challenge than someone like, I don't know, Lance. But Blue wasn't the only champion to give you a run for your money. That's right, number 3 is... The final obstacle in your way to becoming the champion of Sinnoh, Cynthia is not to be messed with. Throughout the game, Cynthia showed up every now and again to either help you out, such as going into the Distortion World with you, or give off exposition, such as explaining what the Distortion World is. And when she's not fighting trainers, she's off researching new areas of the Pokemon world, which might explain why she was in that city in Unova. Yeah, that's it. Cynthia in a bikini for the... Get your mind out of the gutter. On top of having an interesting personality and role in the story, I also really enjoy the music that plays before the fight begins. I'm a sucker for a piano piece, and this was handled really well, as the notes add to the suspense of taking on someone as strong as the champion of the region. So how does the fight play out? I think it was also handled really well. You remember my complaints earlier about Lance? Cynthia chucks that out the window because her team is one of the most balanced teams in all of Pokemon. She has a Spiritomb, a Roserade, a Gastrodon in Diamond version, Dofugus in Platinum, a Lucario, a Milotic, and her main Pokemon/bitch, Garchomp. Wanna know what's worse? Most of these Pokemon have perfect individual values, which increases their stats even further. Oh boy, Cynthia's teams in the Sinnoh games were a noob's worst nightmare if they weren't prepared, and even competitive players have had a hard time with her Garchomp, further proving that this will not be an easy fight. And I like that. I like that she has a varied team because it makes her feel like an actual Pokemon trainer and work hard to make it to the rank of champion, and not someone who makes me wonder how they got the rank in the first place. I also love the music that plays in the fight itself. It packs a lot of excitement and suspense to it, and is easily one of my favorite tracks in the game. Whenever I listen to this song, it makes me excited to do something, like, I don't know, scripting? So after a champion like that, I was excited for the next champion. And then... Done! The strange thing about the Kirby series is that the games may be easy for hardcore gamers, but they usually end their games with a really good final boss. For a while, my favorite final boss from Kirby was 02 from Kirby 64. But what if I told you that there was a boss that I thought was a lot better than 02? Well, let me tell you about Magolor. Throughout Kirby's Return to Dreamland, you are tasked with collecting orbs and parts to repair Magolor's spaceship, while also taking on the Big Bad with a Master Crown. After defeating said Big Bad, Magolor pulls the Fooled You card, and not only reveals that he was using you, but also takes the Master Crown from himself, and transforms into... a Count Black knockoff? Oh boy, Will's not gonna be too happy about that. So you chase off into space to kick his traitorous ass on dragons in a Gradius-like level where you shoot a living spaceship to hell. That is freaking awesome! Once you defeat his ship, it's time to take down Magolor in a two-phase fight to save the universe. If you thought that the crown just changed his appearance, you thought wrong, because Magolor got a massive power increase, allowing him to create objects out of antimatter, shoot giant beams of energy, and even rip open the space-time continuum just to kill you. Hell, towards the end of Phase 1, he copies a move from the Grand Doomer and puts up a shield that can only be pierced by super abilities, and is wrapped up with Kirby slicing and dicing him with every sword from the Ultra Sword ability. That would normally leave him in little Magolor pieces, but Magolor is still not done with you yet. He completely absorbs the crown and becomes a being of hatred known as Magolor Soul. As the music, which is pretty great by the way, implies, this guy means business now. On top of the attacks he can already do to you, he can now rip open even more holes in the space-time continuum, travel through said holes to attack you, and even use his own version of your super abilities to make you dead. So, needless to say, this guy is no easy walk in the park, and to be honest, I like that. It feels like what a final boss should be. It's your final challenge. It shouldn't be impossible, but it also shouldn't be a cakewalk for you either. And I think Magolor has that in-between zone of difficulty handled pretty well. Top that off with some stunning visuals, and you have the ingredients for a great final boss fight. And yet, I found one that I like more. Which is it? Well, let's find out. So what final boss did I like more? Well, it's from a franchise I talk about a lot, actually.
But you already have an entry from Pokemon. Who else could it be?
Xemnas. Throughout the game, you encounter Organization 13 numerous times, either executing their plan to revive Kingdom Hearts, or to do stupid shit. Seriously, screw you, Demix. And you manage to slay, or indirectly slay them, until the leader of the organization is the last one standing. During these interactions, you find out that the organization is composed of nobodies, beings without hearts, and they want to revive Kingdom Hearts by using the hearts of the living, as well as Heartless, to fill that empty void, aka their hearts, with light. Now before I talk about the fight itself, I just wanted to say that I like Xemnas as a villain. He's a pretty good manipulator, depending on the game, being the one responsible for messing up Sora, Roxas's, and Shionne's lives in 358/2, as well as this game. He's able to back up his motives by using the Heartless/Nobodies, and he's arguably the strongest of the organization. But unlike Ansem, who is more filled with rage and power, Xemnas is more intelligent and calm. Sure, he wants to remake the universe as we later find out, but considering his power in this game, I could see him more likely to succeed than Ansem. Speaking of power, let me tell you about the fights. In Phase 1, Xemnas has a one-on-one fight with you to test your strength, and we begin to see what Xemnas can do. Similar to the other members of the organization who control elements, Xemnas controls nothingness, giving him the ability to create ethereal blades, create a shield out of nothingness, and an indestructible ball of darkness that charges you. Top it off with a very fancy cinematic of the two running up the skyscraper, and you get a pretty good first phase. After that phase, you go through a door and enter what I assume to be Xemnas' interpretation of a kingdom, and now you have a living castle to deal with. After you take out the cannons and the energy core, Phase 2 begins with Xemnas looking more like a king. Not only does this look very fitting considering his world is like a kingdom, but it also looks badass. In this form, Xemnas has access to all of the weapons from the organization, and uses them to try and kill you. But it's still not over yet. Xemnas summons a friggin' dragon to destroy the tower, and now you and Riku pilot a spaceship to try and kill this gigantic creature. After subduing said dragon in a boss fight, which is actually really fun, Xemnas is still not done with you, as he transports Sora and Riku to another dimension, and the two of you take on his king form once again. Although Donald and Goofy aren't able to help you in this phase, this fight is roughly the same until you get knocked out into space. Then you have to float towards the head of the dragon, which is where Xemnas is, and you get to smack a giant building of the dragon's shield with your Keyblade. That is awesome! After taking down his king mode for the second time, Xemnas teleports Riku and Sora to another dimension, and Xemnas even gets a new coat, signifying that he contains the power of both light and darkness. Thus, the final phase of this boss fight begins. Now Xemnas has access to bolts of light and darkness, increased speed, is able to duplicate himself, shoot even more ethereal beams than before, and even encase Sora in a ball, which results in the player being able to play as Riku while he tries to save Sora, which I think does add some pretty good variety. And just like Phase 1, all these phases are very cinematic. Not only do the backgrounds look good, the music for all the phases are fantastic. Hands down my favorite tracks in the game. They pack so much emotion and energy to them that I cannot help but love these tracks. On top of all that, for this final phase, it ends with Xemnas unleashing bullet hell on our heroes, resulting in the player using the reflect command in order to survive. While this may be a pain on the fingers, I think it looks very flashy and shows how powerful these attacks can be, since they hit like a truck if you don't use reflect at the right time. Cap it off with a very satisfying finale, and you get one of the best final bosses in the Kingdom Hearts series. Overall, I think the final fight with Xemnas is very well done. It hits all the right notes for me. The music is fantastic, the phases are a lot of fun to go through, the payoff is great, the cinematics are great, and it was a very satisfying final boss from start to finish. I'm the Mounty, and this concludes my favorite final bosses list. Thank you for watching, and take care. And done. I can't believe it. It's finally done.
Well done. Now, looking at your body, you seem to be counteracting the Red Lantern. You'll still be transformed into it, and you are still technically a lantern. However, you won't be the
Awesome. So it looks like I might be able to control the power ring, but not as useful as the DC version. Well, still, at least I'm not going to get taken over. And that's great.
Now, before I take my leave, I just want to remind you that there are at least 7 sides of the emotional spectrum, and considering that you got one, and those from lies, others, now we shall see what happens. Farewell.
I can't believe the Mounty defeated me, set me on my powers temporarily, and took my samurai! He's going to pay for this! I'm going to make him suffer a torment worse than whatever that stupid scorpion red thing could do! What the?
I detect great fear in your hearts. I think you would make a great yellow lantern. I have a power ring here. It will give you the power to defeat the Mounty on his own.
A ring?
All I need you to do is recite the oath, and you will have unimaginable power to make those words of yours come true.
I want the Mounty to suffer for what he did to me. I want to make him feel a pain worse than death. I accept this. In the blackest day, in brightest night, beware your fears made into light. Let those who try to stop what's right burn like my power, Solomon's might.